Welcome, dear listeners, to Mysteries Unveiled, the podcast that breathes new life into the enigmatic world of classic whodunits. I'm your host, and today we embark on a chilling journey through the sleepy village of St. Mary Mead in our original adaptation, Miss Marple's Murder on Bloodstained Pavement. If you're a devotee of Agatha Christie's spinster sleuth, or discovering her razor-sharp insights for the first time, prepare for a tale woven with subtle clues, village secrets, and the unerring wisdom of an unlikely detective. Cozy up with your favorite brew. Let's unravel the darkness together. Picture a peaceful English village shattered by a gruesome discovery. A talented artist lies dead on ancient cobblestones, his blood painting a sinister message that whispers of betrayal. Enter Miss Jane Marple, the unassuming elderly lady with a knack for spotting evil in the everyday, as she peels back layers of jealousy, hidden affairs, and long-buried grudges among neighbors you thought you knew. But as the pavement stain reveals its twisted secrets, will she unmask the killer before another life is claimed? This isn't your grandmother's cozy mystery. It's a gripping labyrinth of deception that will have you suspecting everyone in your own circle. Don't move. The verdict is coming. Chapter 1. Whispers in the Village Lane. The twilight in St. Mary Mead wrapped the village like a soft shawl, muting the sharp edges of thatched cottages and winding lanes into a dreamlike haze. Golden hues from the setting sun bled into lavender shadows, and the air carried the faint perfume of blooming honeysuckle mingled with the earthy tang of impending rain. Miss Jane Marple, a spry figure in her 70s, with a crown of snow-white hair neatly pinned beneath a sensible hat, ambled along the cobblestone path toward the high street. Her knitting basket swung gently from her arm, a constant companion that concealed more than just wool and needles. It held the quiet power of observation, honed over decades of watching human nature unfold in its most unassuming forms. She had been visiting old Mrs. Bantry at Dolling Cottage, sharing anecdotes over scones and clotted cream, when the evening called her homeward. The conversation had meandered from garden pests to the peculiarities of the new vicar, but Miss Marple's mind lingered on the subtle tensions she'd sensed in the village lately, whispers of discord like faint ripples on a pond, often heralded deeper disturbances. As she turned the corner onto Elm Lane, her steps faltered at an unnatural sight that shattered the pastoral serenity. There, sprawled across the uneven cobblestones, lay Reginald Thorne, the local artist whose vibrant landscapes had graced many a parlour wall in St. Mary Mead. His body was twisted at an awkward angle, as if he'd been caught mid-stride by some invisible force. A dark crimson stain seeped from beneath his head, pooling in the grooves of the stones like ink from an overturned well, blooming outward in tendrils that resembled the petals of a sinister flower. His palette, shattered into splintered wood and smeared pigments, lay a few feet away, colours mingling grotesquely with the blood. A single glove, fine leather, embroidered with an initial R, rested incongruously nearby, as if discarded in haste. Miss Marple's heart quickened, but her composure remained a fortress. She knelt carefully, her knees protesting the chill of the stones, and peered closer. No weapon in sight, yet the wound at the back of his skull suggested a brutal blow. The air hummed with the first murmurs of alarm as villagers emerged from their doorways, drawn by an instinctive pull toward tragedy. "Good heavens!" gasped Miss Hartnell, the postmistress, clutching her apron as she hurried from her shop across the lane. Her round face flushed with shock, eyes wide behind wire-rimmed glasses. "Is that Mr. Thorne? Oh, merciful saints, what happened?" A cluster formed swiftly. The baker, Mr. Pye, still dusted with flour, young Tommy Pierce, the errand boy, gaping openly, and Mrs. Price Ridley, the village busybody, already wringing her hands in dramatic fashion. Murdered, in broad daylight, or near enough. Who could have done such a thing? Miss Marple rose slowly, her mind cataloguing details with the precision of a weaver threading a loom. The glove was odd, not on Thorne's hand, but several paces away, unstained. The palette's breakage suggested force, perhaps a struggle. And then there was the quarrel Miss Hartnell had mentioned in passing during a recent postal exchange. A heated exchange Thorne had with his rival, the sculptor Edmund Swettenham, over a contested commission for the village hall mural. "Someone fetch the constable," Miss Marple suggested mildly, her voice a calm anchor amid the rising tide of panic. "And perhaps Dr. Haydock, though I fear it's too late for medical aid." As the group buzzed with speculation, Miss Marple slipped into the role she knew best, the unobtrusive observer. She wandered to the edge of the scene, noting the faint scuff marks on the pavement leading toward a narrow alleyway flanked by hedgerows. A torn leaf clung to one stone, fresh and green, as if recently disturbed. By the time Constable Slack arrived, huffing from his bicycle ride, the crowd had swelled. Slack, a young man with a penchant for bluster over brains, surveyed the body with a frown. "Stand back, all of you. This is police business now." He knelt, examining the wound. "Blunt force, I'd wager. Robbery gone wrong. His wallet's missing." Miss Marple tilted her head. "Perhaps not robbery, Constable. Look at his watch. Still on his wrist, gold chain intact. And that glove. It seems out of place." Slack grunted dismissively. "Details, Miss Marple. We'll handle it." Undeterred, she turned to Miss Hartnell, who lingered nearby, twisting her apron. "You mentioned overhearing an argument yesterday, didn't you, between Mr. Thorne and Mr. Swettenham?" The postmistress nodded eagerly, grateful for an audience. "Oh, yes. In the high street, near the tea shop, voices raised, something about stealing my vision and you'll regret crossing me." Mr. Swettenham stormed off, red as a beet. As evening deepened, lamps flickered to life in cottage windows, casting warm glows that contrasted the cold horror on the lane. Miss Marple accepted an invitation to tea at the vicarage, where the Reverend Clement and his wife Griselda had gathered a small group to discuss the tragedy. The vicarage parlour was cosy, with chintz armchairs and a fire crackling merrily, but the mood was sombre. "Poor Reginald," sighed Griselda, pouring steaming cups. "Such talent, gone in an instant. Who could harbour such violence here?" The Reverend steepled his fingers. "Envy, perhaps. Artists are a passionate lot." Miss Marple sipped her tea, the warmth seeping into her bones. Passion indeed. Mr. Swettenham's alibi for this evening. Has anyone confirmed it? Griselda's eyes widened. He was at the church hall, rehearsing for the pageant, but he left early, complaining of a headache. A subtle probe ensued, Miss Marple guiding the conversation like a gentle breeze steering a sail. Through anecdotes shared around the table, a picture emerged. Swettenham's jealousy over Thorne's rising fame, a recent rejection from a London gallery that Thorne had secured. By the time the gathering dispersed, Miss Marple had pieced together enough to pay a discreet visit to Swettenham's cottage the next morning. Dawn broke with a soft drizzle, veiling St. Mary Mead in a shimmering mist. Miss Marple, umbrella in hand, knocked on the sculptor's door, Swettenham answered, his burly frame filling the threshold, eyes shadowed with fatigue. Miss Marple, what brings you here so early? A matter of clarification, Mr. Swettenham, about your whereabouts last evening. He bristled, inviting her in reluctantly to a studio cluttered with chisels and half-formed statues. I was home after the rehearsal, alone, sketching ideas. She nodded sympathetically. And your glove? I noticed one missing from your pair on the mantel. He glanced sharply, then faltered. Lost it days ago. Why? The conversation twisted artfully, Miss Marple drawing out inconsistencies. A neighbour spotting him near Elm Lane, a fresh scratch on his hand. Under her gentle but relentless questioning, Swettenham cracked. Fine. I argued with him again yesterday, pushed him in anger, but he was alive when I left. The glove, I must have dropped it fleeing. Miss Marple's eyes softened. A momentary lapse, perhaps, but not murder. The wound suggests something heavier than a push. Swettenham sagged in relief as Constable Slack, tipped off anonymously, arrived to verify. The rival's deception, fabricating solitude to hide shame, was exposed, but he was cleared of the killing. The village breathed easier, gossip shifting to sympathy. Yet as Miss Marple returned home, knitting needles clicking, in rhythm with her thoughts, the bloodstains' irregular pattern nagged. Not a simple pool, but splashed, as if manipulated. Deeper malice simmered beneath the surface, concealed in the faces she knew so well. Chapter 2. Echoes of hidden grudges. Morning sunlight pierced the lace curtains of Miss Marple's cosy sitting room like delicate arrows, illuminating the fine china teacup in her hand. The Darjeeling steamed gently, its amber hue mirroring the golden dawn outside, where St. Mary Mead stirred from its nocturnal hush. Birds trilled in the garden, a counterpoint to the somber thoughts swirling in Miss Marple's mind. The image of Reginald Thorne's lifeless form on the cobblestones lingered, a puzzle with edges that refused to align neatly. Swettenham's confession of a mere altercation had provided a fleeting sense of progress, but the bloodstain's deliberate splash suggested orchestration beyond impulsive rage. She set down her cup and reached for her knitting, the rhythmic click of needles a soothing metronome for her deductions. Thorne had been no saint. His reputation as a charmer masked sharper dealings. Whispers from the village grapevine hinted at financial entanglements, perhaps with his estranged sister, Evelyn Thorne, who had returned to St. Mary Mead only months ago after a mysterious absence in London. And then there was Mr. Hargrove, the gallery owner from the nearby town of Much Benham, whose sleek automobile had been spotted idling near Thorne's studio more than once. Determined to trace these threads, Miss Marple donned her tweed coat and set out for Thorne's cottage on the village outskirts. The path wound through meadows dotted with wild flowers, their petals unfurling in the warming air, but her thoughts were far from idyllic. Evelyn would be there, overseeing the artist's effects, a perfect opportunity for a sympathetic visit. The cottage was a rambling affair, its thatched roof sagging like weary shoulders under climbing roses. Evelyn answered the door, her face a mask of composed grief, though her eyes, sharp and calculating, betrayed a flicker of wariness. She was in her 40s, elegantly dressed in mourning black, with hair pulled into a severe chignon that accentuated her angular features. "Miss Marple," Evelyn said, her voice smooth as polished marble. "How kind of you to call. The village has been so supportive in this dreadful time." They settled in the sunlit parlour, surrounded by Thorne's unfinished canvases. vibrant depictions of local landmarks that now seemed haunted by absence. Miss Marple accepted a proffered biscuit, crumbling it absently. Your brother was a true talent. Such a loss. Tell me, did he mention any troubles lately? Financial, perhaps. Evelyn's fingers tightened on her teacup. Reginald was always secretive about money. We hadn't spoken much since our parents' passing. I came back to mend fences, but... She trailed off, gazing at a portrait of a stern couple on the mantel. Their parents, no doubt. Pressing gently, Miss Marple steered the conversation to Hargrove. I understand he handled Reginald's sales. A shrewd businessman from what I hear. Evelyn's lips thinned. Shrewd. Exploitative, more like. Reginald complained of delayed payments, but he needed the exposure. As they spoke, a young maid, Annie, wide-eyed and fidgety, entered with fresh tea. Miss Marple noted her trembling hands, the way she avoided Evelyn's gaze. A potential witness, perhaps intimidated. Excusing herself to stretch her legs, Miss Marple wandered into Thorne's studio annex, a cluttered space redolent of oil paints and turpentine. Easels stood like silent sentinels, and on a dusty shelf, she spotted a leather-bound sketchbook, its pages warped from use. Flipping through, she found not just landscapes, but hasty drawings of figures in furtive poses. A man handing over an envelope in a shadowed alley, a signature scrawled repeatedly as if practiced. Forgery. The implications bloomed like ink in water. Tucking the book under her arm, borrowing it for sentimental perusal, she returned to Evelyn, who eyed it suspiciously but said nothing. Bidding farewell, Miss Marple headed to Much Benham, a short bus ride away, her mind abuzz. Hargrove's gallery was a modern affair, glass-fronted and pretentious, displaying abstract works that clash with Thorne's traditional style. Mr. Hargrove greeted her with oily charm, a portly man in a pinstriped suit, his moustache waxed to points. Miss Marple, to what do I owe this pleasure? Come to browse our collection. Seated in his opulent office, surrounded by ledgers and framed certificates, she feigned interest in purchasing a Thorne piece. Such vitality in his work. But I wonder, were there any disputes over commissions? Artists can be temperamental. Hargrove chuckled, but his eyes darted. Minor quibbles. Reginald was a star. Sales were brisk. Producing the sketchbook, Miss Marple opened to the forged signatures. Hargrove's own name replicated in varying inks. These suggest otherwise. Practice for duplicating contracts, perhaps, to skim profits. The gallery owner's face drained of colour. Preposterous. Those are mere doodles. Yet under her steady gaze, cracks appeared. Hargrove admitted to adjusting a few sales records, small frauds to cover gallery debts, but swore ignorance of murder. I padded invoices, yes, but kill him. He was my golden goose. The confession cleared Annie, the maid, whom Hargrove had tried to implicate in theft, to deflect scrutiny. Miss Marple phoned Constable Slack from the gallery, ensuring Hargrove's detention for questioning. A minor victory, but embezzlement loomed larger. Hints in the ledgers of siphoned funds from Thorne's estate. Back in St. Mary Mead, the village fete buzzed with life under a canopy of bunting and stalls. The air thrummed with laughter, the scent of candy floss and fried donuts wafting amid games and raffles. Miss Marple arrived as the afternoon peaked, the sun casting a festive glow. She spotted Hargrove, released on bail, brazenly manning an art booth, schmoozing patrons. Weaving through the crowd, she confronted him amid the throng, her voice carrying just enough to draw ears. Mr. Hargrove, Those adjustments, did they include forging Reginald's will? The sketchbook suggests as much. Faces turned, whispers rippled. Hargrove blustered, "Slander, I'll sue." But Miss Marple persisted, revealing a telegram from a London solicitor confirming discrepancies in Thorne's documents. Cornered, Hargrove crumbled before the villagers, admitting to theft of several paintings' proceeds. "I needed the money, debts mounting, but I didn't strike him." The constable, present for crowd control, escorted Hargrove away amid gasps. Evelyn, watching from afar, approached Miss Marple with reluctant gratitude. "You've exposed the rot. Reginald deserved better." The fate resumed with subdued energy. Justice served in part, theft confessed, family funds partially restored. Yet as Miss Marple strolled homeward, her eye caught a stray thread snagged on a distant hedge along the lane. A fibre from Thorne's tweed coat, far from the crime scene. It fluttered like a flag of unfinished business, pointing toward alliances shadowed and unexplored, urging her deeper into the enigma. Chapter 3, The Stains' Silent Testimony. Midday sun blazed over St. Mary Mead like a relentless interrogator, casting harsh shadows that etched the village lanes in stark relief. The cobblestones of Elm Lane, now cordoned with makeshift barriers of twine and stakes, gleamed under the light, but the blood stain, darkened to a rusty brown, remained a mute accusation against the pavement's ancient grit. Miss Jane Marple stood at the edge of the scene, her parasol tilted to shield her from the glare, her eyes tracing the irregular contours of the mark. It wasn't a mere puddle. It fanned out in deliberate arcs as if brushed by an artist's hand or a murderer's calculated sweep. The air hummed with the distant buzz of bees in nearby gardens, a deceptive serenity masking the undercurrents of unease rippling through the community. Constable Slack, mopping his brow with a handkerchief, approached with his usual mix of deference and exasperation. "Miss Marple, you're back again. We've combed this spot thrice over. Blunt trauma, wallet gone, likely a vagrant or opportunistic thief." She smiled faintly, her voice as gentle as a summer breeze. "Perhaps, Constable, but vagrants seldom linger to arrange their handiwork. Look here, the stain's edge feathers outward, not splattered from a fall, and that footprint, half obscured in the soft earth beside the curb, too pristine for a scuffle." Slack squinted, kneeling awkwardly. "By Jove, you're right. Size 9, I'd say, with a worn heel. Could be anyone's." "Not quite," Miss Marple murmured, her mind flashing to the villagers' footwear glimpsed at the fate. "Let's reconstruct, shall we? You be Thorne, walking homeward. I'll play the assailant." The constable hesitated, then complied, striding along the lane with exaggerated nonchalance. Miss Marple followed, parasol in hand as a makeshift weapon. Now, a blow from behind, thus. She mimed the strike, noting how Slack stumbled forward, arms flailing. See, the body would crumple inward, blood pooling centrally, but our stain spread sideways, as if dragged slightly. Slack rubbed his neck theatrically. "Dragged. To stage a robbery, maybe," explains the missing wallet. As they pondered, a faint whiff of perfume wafted on the wind. Jasmine, heady and out of place, amid the lane's usual sense of damp stone and wild mint. Miss Marple's nose twitched. It evoked memories of elegant drawing rooms, not rustic paths. Interesting, not a common village fragrance. Their impromptu investigation drew a small audience. The blacksmith, Mr. Higgs, pausing his wagon, and young Miss Weatherby, the schoolteacher, clutching a stack of books. "Dreadful business," Miss Weatherby said, her voice quivering. "Mr. Thorne was mentoring my art class. So vibrant, now this." Miss Marple engaged her warmly. Did he mention any visitors lately? Someone perfumed, perhaps? The teacher frowned. Well, Mrs. Larkspur stopped by the school last week, inquiring about private lessons for her niece. She wears jasmine, I believe, but she's a recluse, hardly ventures out. The name sparked interest. Mrs. Larkspur, the widow residing in Ivy Cottage on the village fringe, was known for her seclusion since her husband's untimely death 5 years prior. A riding accident, officially. Rumours swirled of insurance payouts and lingering bitterness toward the artistic crowd her husband had patronised, including Thorn. Thanking the onlookers, Miss Marple bid slack farewell and made her way to Ivy Cottage, the sun climbing higher and warming the air to a balmy embrace. The path meandered through orchards heavy with ripening apples, their scent a sweet counterpoint to the morning's grim focus. The cottage emerged like a hidden gem, shrouded in climbing ivy and bordered by a meticulously tended rose garden, blooms exploding in riots of pink and scarlet. Mrs. Larkspur answered the door herself, a striking woman in her 50s with silver-streaked hair cascading in loose waves, dressed in a flowing lavender gown that whispered of faded glamour. Her parlour was a sanctuary of elegance, velvet settees, crystal vases brimming with fresh roses, and the pervasive aroma of jasmine from a diffuser on the mantel. Miss Marple, to what do I owe this unexpected visit? Seated amid the floral opulence, Miss Marple accepted a glass of elderflower cordial, its effervescence tickling her palate. A sad matter, Mrs. Larkspur. Reginald Thorne's death. Such a shock. I understand you knew him. The widow's eyes narrowed slightly, her fingers tracing the rim of her glass. Knew him. Peripherally. My late husband collected his early works. Reginald was ambitious. We exchanged pleasantries at gatherings. Miss Marple nodded, her gaze drifting to a framed photograph on the sideboard. Mr. Larkspur on horseback, beaming beside Thorne at a hunt. Your husband and he were friends then. No lingering resentments after the accident. Mrs. Larkspur stiffened. Accident? Yes, a tragic fall. Reginald was there that day, insisted on a risky jump. But resentment, life moves on. The conversation danced like a delicate waltz, Miss Marple probing with feigned innocence. Your alibi for the evening of the murder, alone in your garden, tending roses. Precisely, pruning the climbers till dusk. Yet inconsistencies emerged. A neighbour's dog had barked incessantly around twilight, as if at an intruder, or someone departing hastily, and the jasmine, too potent to fade quickly from clothing. Miss Marple shifted tactics. That footprint near the scene, feminine, perhaps, delicate arch. Mrs. Larkspur's composure faltered, a flush creeping up her neck. What are you implying? Gently, relentlessly, Miss Marple unravelled the thread. An affair, Mrs. Larkspur, with Thorne after your husband's death. Jealousy when he spurned you for younger admirers. The widow's eyes filled with tears, her voice breaking. It was brief, passionate, but he ended it cruelly, said I was clinging to ghosts. I confronted him that evening, shoved him in rage. He hit his head. I panicked, staged the robbery. Miss Marple's heart ached with sympathy, even as truth emerged. The wallet, you took it to mislead, and the blood, smeared to suggest dragging. Sobbing, Mrs. Larkspur nodded. I didn't mean to kill him, just to make him feel my pain. Constable Slack, summoned discreetly via a note to a passing boy, arrived to take her statement. The village exhaled as a word spread. A crime of passion, not cold calculation. Neighbours gathered in hushed support, harmony tentatively restored. Yet Miss Marple, departing the cottage as shadows lengthened, paused at the garden gate. A discreet sample of the bloodstain, pocketed earlier for analysis by a chemist friend in London, had revealed an unnatural sheen, an additive, perhaps anticoagulant, to enhance the spread. Premeditation lurked, propelling her into a maze of calculated revenge beyond one woman's impulse. Chapter 4. Threads of betrayal unwoven. Dusk descended upon St. Mary Mead like a silken curtain drawn by invisible hands, transforming the village's familiar contours into enigmatic silhouettes. The sky bled from fiery orange to bruised purple, and the first stars pricked the heavens like distant pinpoints of accusation. Lamps flickered to life in cottage windows, casting pools of amber light that danced across dew-kissed lawns, but an undercurrent of disquiet hummed through the air, as palpable as the evening chill seeping through woolen shawls. Miss Jane Marple, her steps measured and purposeful, made her way to the vicarage, where she had arranged a discreet assembly under the guise of a prayer vigil for Reginald Thorne. The invitation had been whispered through trusted channels, the Reverend's wife Griselda, the ever-curious Miss Hartnell, ensuring only the key figures would attend, their suspicions lulled by the veneer of communal mourning. The vicarage stood as a beacon of solidity amid the gathering gloom, its stone facade warmed by climbing wisteria now barren in winter's approach. Inside, the drawing room was aglow with candlelight, the flames reflecting off polished oak panels and the spines of leather-bound hymnals. A faint scent of beeswax mingled with the richer notes of sherry decanted for the occasion. The assembled group formed a tense circle. Evelyn Thorne, her mourning attire now accentuated by a brooch of jet that caught the light like a raven's eye. Mr. Hargrove, released on bail, but fidgeting with his cufflinks as if they were manacles. Annie the maid, her apron traded for a simple frock, eyes downcast. Constable Slack, off-duty but authoritative in his pressed uniform, and the Reverend Clement, presiding with a Bible open on his lap, though his gaze betrayed a flicker of intrigue. Griselda poured sherry with graceful efficiency, her youthful energy a counterpoint to the room's weighted atmosphere. "Such a trying time," she murmured, handing a glass to Evelyn. "But fellowship eases the burden." Miss Marple accepted her own glass, sipping sparingly as she settled into an armchair that afforded a view of every face. "Indeed, Mrs. Clement, and in fellowship, truths often emerge unbidden, like threads in a tapestry, pulled loose by the slightest tug." Evelyn's hand trembled slightly. "Truth. We've had enough revelations, Miss Marple. My brother's killer, Mrs. Larkspur, confessed to her crime of passion." "Ah, but passions rarely burn in isolation," Miss Marple replied, her tone as mild as milk, yet laced with an edge that commanded attention. "Consider your own burdens, Miss Thorne. Gambling debts, I believe. Whispers from the casino in Danemouth suggest substantial losses, sums that might drive one to desperate alliances." Evelyn's cheeks flushed, but before she could retort, Hargrove interjected, his voice oily with indignation. "What rot! My dealings with Reginald were business, nothing more. Those adjustments were mere oversights." Miss Marple's eyes twinkled behind her spectacles. Oversights that conveniently aligned with Evelyn's needs. Alone, perhaps, secured against forged artworks, pigments laced with toxins to age them artificially, fooling appraisers. The room stirred, glasses clinking as hands tightened. Constable Slack cleared his throat. "Now, Miss Marple, let's not leap to conspiracies. Evidence is my domain." "Quite right, Constable," she agreed amiably. "Yet evidence abounds. Reginald's easels sabotaged with weakened struts, causing a collapse that could have been fatal weeks ago, dismissed as an accident. Who benefits from an artist's untimely end? An heir drowning in debt, a gallery owner skimming profits. Annie gasped, her voice a whisper. The easels. I saw Mr. Hargrove in the studio last month tinkering. Said he was appraising. Hargrove surged to his feet. Lies. The girl fabricates to save her skin. She pilfered silver from the cottage. Miss Marple shook her head. No, Annie is innocent, as we've established. But you, Mr. Hargrove, your fingerprints on the poisoned pigments, lead-based, toxic enough to sicken over time, masking as artistic flair. The Reverend leaned forward, his Bible forgotten. Poisoned pigments? Good Lord, that's premeditated. Precisely, Miss Marple continued, her narrative unfolding like a well-rehearsed play. Evelyn supplied the debts as motive, Hargrove the means. But the web tightens. Constable, your involvement surprises, yet fits. Buried resentment from a rejected promotion, perhaps. Or ties to the Larkspurs, your cousin, the late husband, whose accident left debts you quietly shouldered. Slack's face reddened, his mustache bristling. Outrageous. I uphold the law. Yet you overlooked the footprints matched to your boots, Constable. And the telegram I sent to headquarters confirms irregularities in the initial crime scene report, details altered to point away from premeditation. Accusations swirled then, voices rising like autumn gales whipping leaves into frenzy. Evelyn pointed at Hargrove. You promised the forgeries would cover my losses, said Reginald's death would free his estate. Hargrove snarled back. And you provided the insider access, but the constable, he suggested the staging, the wallet theft, to mimic robbery. Slack slammed his fist on the armrest. Enough! It was a favor gone awry. Larkspur's push was the spark. We merely embellished to protect reputations. Griselda's eyes widened in horror, while the Reverend murmured a prayer. Miss Marple orchestrated the chaos with subtle nods, drawing confessions like venom from a wound. And the forged will, hidden in Reginald's safe, naming Evelyn sole beneficiary. Signatures practiced in that sketchbook, Hargrove's handiwork. Annie, emboldened, spoke up. I found drafts in the wastebasket, tore them up, but kept one scrap. Here. She produced a crumpled paper from her pocket, the ink smudged but damning. The dismantling peaked in a torrent of disclosures. The conspiracy laid bare. A triad of greed, resentment, and desperation. Evelyn's debts had entangled her with Hargrove, who poisoned pigments to weaken Thorn gradually. Slack, nursing grudges, sabotaged investigations and easels for a cut. The forged will absolved Annie of any lingering suspicion, her loyalty rewarded with truth. As tempers cooled, Miss Marple rose. A tapestry unwoven, threads of betrayal exposed. Justice beckons. Constable, perhaps summon your superiors. Slack, defeated, nodded mutely. The gathering dissolved into hushed arrangements, partial resolution weaving through the room like a mending stitch. Debts acknowledged, forgeries destroyed, alliances fractured. Yet under the moon's watchful gaze, as Miss Marple stepped into the night, a final knot tightened. The true orchestrator's motive, deeper than greed. A vendetta rooted in forgotten slights, eluded still. Drawing her inexorably toward the heart of deception, the pavement's echo, unresolved. Chapter 5. The pavement's final verdict. The full moon loomed over St. Mary Mead like an unblinking sentinel, its silvery radiance piercing the velvet canopy of night and etching the village in stark monochrome. Shadows stretched long and lean across the thatched roofs and winding paths, transforming the quaint hamlet into a stage set for revelations. Miss Jane Marple, her shawl drawn tight against the crisp December air. Christmas Eve, 2025, though the festive spirit felt distant amid the pall of murder, led a solemn procession toward Reginald Thorne's studio. The group trailed behind her like reluctant actors in a drama nearing its climax. Evelyn Thorne, her face a porcelain mask of feigned composure. Mr. Hargrove, shackled by his own admissions and bail conditions. Annie the maid, clutching a lantern that bobbed with her nervous steps. The disgraced Constable Slack, now flanked by two stern officers from the county force. Mrs. Larkspur, pale and subdued after her confession, and the Reverend Clement with Griselda, their presence a moral anchor in the unfolding storm. The studio, annexed to Thorne's cottage, stood bathed in moonlight, its windows aglow with a soft flicker of oil lamps Annie had lit earlier at Miss Marple's request. The door creaked open on hinges, protesting the intrusion, releasing a heady wave of turpentine and linseed oil that clung to the air like a veil of forgotten creativity. Canvases leaned against walls in haphazard stacks, their surfaces alive with half-formed visions, storm-tossed seas, enigmatic portraits, now silent witnesses to the artist's abrupt end. Easels loomed like skeletal guardians, and in the center, a long workbench cluttered with brushes, palettes, and jars of pigment served as an impromptu forum. "Gather round, if you please," Miss Marple said, her voice steady and unassuming, yet carrying the weight of inevitability. She positioned herself beside the workbench, her knitting basket at her feet, a humble prop that belied the razor-sharp intuition it symbolized. The group formed a ragged semicircle, the moon's light slanting through a skylight to illuminate their faces in dramatic chiaroscuro, highlighting furrowed brows and evasive glances. Evelyn broke the silence first, her tone laced with impatience. "This charade, Miss Marple, what purpose? We've aired our sins at the vicarage. My brother's death was a tragic web of passions and greeds, but it's untangled now." Miss Marple's eyes, sharp as flint behind her spectacles, met Evelyn's. "Untangled? Oh, my dear, the threads are merely loosened. The true knot, the heart of this deception, remains bound tight. Reginald's murder was no impulsive act, nor a mere conspiracy of convenience. It was a masterpiece of misdirection, painted with the same cunning he applied to his canvases." She gestured to the blood-stained pavement outside, visible through an open window where the moon cast a ghostly pallor on the stones. "That stain, you see, adulterated with an anticoagulant from his own studio supplies to ensure it spread dramatically, suggesting a frenzied attack, not the work of a passionate shove, Mrs. Larkspur, though your confrontation provided a convenient spark." Mrs. Larkspur shifted uncomfortably, her jasmine scent cloying in the confined space. "I admitted my rage, the push, but the blow, I fled before." "Precisely," Miss Marple interjected gently. "You fled, leaving him stunned but alive. The fatal strike came later, deliberate and cold." Hargrove snorted, his cufflinks glinting as he crossed his arms. "Then who? Slack here bungled the scene, but he's no killer." Constable Slack glowered, his uniform rumpled. "Watch your tongue. I altered reports to shield the village's name. Debts and affairs scandal enough without murder." The Reverend cleared his throat, his voice a soothing baritone. "Let us seek truth without acrimony. Miss Marple, guide us." With a nod, she began weaving the narrative, her words painting vivid strokes across the room's canvas. "Consider the glove, Reginald's own, planted at the scene unstained to imply a hasty departure. Who had access to his personal effects? His sister, Evelyn, who returned to St. Mary Mead not to mend fences, but to orchestrate inheritance. Evelyn's laugh rang hollow. Absurd. I loved my brother despite our estrangements. Love twisted by vendetta, Miss Marple countered, producing a small, yellowed envelope from her basket. A childhood letter unearthed from Thorne's attic during a discreet search earlier that day. This missive, written by you at age 12, accuses Reginald of sabotaging your art contest entry, switching your painting with a forgery to claim the prize. A childish slight, but one that festered, especially when his talent eclipsed yours, leaving you in shadows of debt and obscurity. The group murmured, eyes darting to Evelyn as she paled. Griselda gasped softly, a grudge from youth. How dreadful. Indeed, Miss Marple continued, her pace quickening like a gathering storm. You enlisted Hargrove for the forgeries, promising shares of the estate, manipulated Mrs. Larkspur's jealousy with anonymous notes hinting at Reginald's infidelities, even drew slack in with whispers of promotion if he muddied the waters. The poisoned pigments, lead-laden to weaken him over months, were your slow poison. But when he discovered the embezzlement, acceleration became necessary. Hargrove turned on Evelyn, his charm fracturing. You said it was just fraud. The pigments were for aging canvases, not harming him. Evelyn's eyes blazed. Fool. He was unraveling everything, confronted me that afternoon about the missing funds. I followed him to the lane, waited until Larkspur's outburst dazed him, then struck with a stone from the hedgerow, precise, final. Annie whimpered, clutching Griselda's arm. Miss Evelyn, but you were kind to me. Kindness as camouflage, Miss Marple said softly. The staged wound, blood mixed with studio thinners to mimic severity, the wallet pocketed to feign robbery, alibis shattered, your solitary walk witnessed by a farmer's lantern light, silhouette matching the footprint's grace. Revelations cascaded then, a torrent breaking dams of denial. Slack admitted altering evidence at Evelyn's behest, lured by bribes to clear his cousin's old debts. Hargrove confessed supplying the toxins, coerced by Evelyn's blackmail over his own forgeries. Mrs. Larkspur, tear-streaked, revealed planted clues in her garden, Evelyn's hand guiding her confrontation. Evelyn stood defiant amid the storm, her chignon unraveling like her composure. He deserved it, stole my light, my future. The inheritance was justice delayed. The county officers stepped forward, cuffs clicking ominously. That's for the courts, miss, one said gruffly. As Evelyn was led away, her defiance crumbling into sobs, the studio exhaled. The Reverend offered a prayer, his words a balm over raw wounds. Griselda embraced Annie, promising support. Hargrove and Slack followed in custody, their roles as accomplices sealing their fates. Miss Marple lingered as the group dispersed, the moon now high and impartial. Bonds mended, she murmured to the Reverend, secrets buried at last. Retreating to her cottage, the path lit by starlight, she paused at her garden gate. The village slumbered, Christmas lights twinkling in windows, a reminder of renewal. Inside, by the fire's glow, she resumed her knitting, the case sealed in her mind's archive, no shadow lingering to mar the dawn.